when the Truth and Reconciliation report came out, and then Stephen Harper apologized, and there was all these 94 calls to action in the report, and there was, I think, a period of time between 2016 and 17 and 18 where there was a lot of focus on that report, and a lot of sympathy was directed toward First Nations people and the trauma they experience and the conditions at the schools, and I personally, my heart went out, and I thought, well, this is important. Reconciliation and recognition of suffering is important. It's not necessarily when you're talking about people talking about what happened to them. You don't necessarily, it's not a court of law where you need evidence. So I think what happened was that kind of died out. It kind of died down, and the story about the report didn't lead to the kind of radical change that some of the constituents within the First Nations community and the activist community wanted to see happen. So when we see the story about the graves, it's like, oh well, this report, it's like 600 or 700 pages. It's a massive document. I mean, how many people have actually read the actual document in Canada? Probably very few. They see sound bites, but when you have a small news item that says bodies found, that is a sensational story that doesn't require 600 pages to tell. It is a headline that just is explosive. So this explosive headline, even though it wasn't true, has taken on a life of its own. The headline is as if it's like an apocryphal story. Sometimes apocryphal stories are hard to refute because they become lodged in people's minds, and they can't kind of grapple with the idea that what they had previously believed might not be true. So it's almost as if psychologically people have invested so much into this story being true, they can't unwind it. So I guess that's the question, is like, how much unwinding do you think the public can do right now, given the years of kind of investment into this apocryphal story? You know, it's not it's something that is a very powerful story that people have bought into. Why can't they let go of it?
Well, I have an answer to me for that. Is there's a show on TV called Forensic Files, which I turn on every once in a while, and somebody does a horrible crime and they figure it out and so forth, and the person goes into court, and in every single case I've ever watched, the person has pled not guilty.
Right.
It's just, this is human nature. People can't afford to. It's in their interest to lie. The politicians of all stripes in Parliament, October 27, 2022, called Canada a genocidal state, alongside China with its Uyghurs, and Nazi Germany with the Jews, and Rwanda with the Tutsis. Like, this is unbelievable, calling Canada genocidal, and then realize that there's no dead children, nefariously. There are no missing children. There are no parent letters saying, where's my child? So I think all authorities in Canada, all institutional leaders are doubling down on their lie because they don't see any alternative. They think they're judging it's in their best interest.
Isn't the smoking gun, if you will, to break open this story, is for the excavations to occur, for forensic analysis. So the GPS is typically...
But it will never happen.
Typically the stage one of a clandestine grave discovery process. So if there's anomalies that may be a clandestine grave, the next stage is to excavate, and they've all admitted that this stage needs to be done. Do you think it will ever be done? The anomalies, do you think there will ever be excavated, or there a follow-up to try and verify the anomalies, or we're going to be in this perpetual state of anomalies?
No, because the guise of this whole exercise is to serve Indigenous people. This was never about Indigenous people. It wasn't an Indigenous person who made up a story about walking in an area where there are 215 dead school children. I think those same people are going to say, to protect Indigenous people, once again, we are going to make sure that that area, the apple orchard in Kamloops, will never be dug up. And never will be about them, and yet it was only ever about them. It was only about people like Trudeau wanting to virtue signal, wanting to say, look how horrible the Canadian governments have been in the past, and then I come and look at all I'm going to do to lift up this poor. It's the white man's burden. It's paternalism of old. It's the people on the political left in Canada and the Western world being the racists while telling everybody else they're racist.
So it has an element of forensic analysis, kind of a CSI. Well, look at what we discovered with our technology. And then they went to stage one. But the next stage in the investigation, which logically should follow to prove the story. So isn't it to their disadvantage to not have final proof? Or is it better for them to have this kind of unproven allegation?
But what they're going to do is they're going to completely, this is what politicians do, and anybody in the public eye, they just duck from issues. Right. So they're going to walk away from it. They never, in my own particular case, no one's ever had a conversation with me. Well, tell us what you know, Jim, about the history of Kamloops residential school, where there are Indigenous teachers, Indigenous principal, and where the graduates never talked about murder, and the TRC never talked about murder at any of these residential schools. So it's really about politicians just seizing on a Canadian George Floyd moment and going, defund the police. In this case, let's defund, let's delegitimize, let's deconstruct, let's decolonialize Canadian history. Let's completely wipe out anything that relates to people of my ancestry. All what Europeans did in Canada was wrong. As Nigel Biggers, historian, said, there's the goodies and the baddies, and just make it really simple for everybody. And all of a sudden you realize, certainly 4 years later, no one's ever going to dig. And they're going to pretend again it's not because of them, it's because they're doing what's right for Indigenous people, which is to keep their blood liable against Christian teachers alive forever. And I love what you said earlier about that myths do become, over time, whether they're apocryphal, whether they're unreal or not, they become real. The Swiss have the legend of William Tell shooting the arrow off the head. So that didn't happen historically. We, the British, we have story of Robin Hood. There's no historical Robin Hood. And so this is what people want. They want these myths.
Myths are very powerful.
Myths are very powerful, and that's what keeps societies together. And this has become a myth, the myth of the evil white man in colonial Canadian history, including up till quite recent, because some residential schools closed, within my lifetime.
So if people say, well, how dare you call it a myth? That's not fair. That's hurtful to Indigenous people who suffered at residential schools. Wouldn't the correct response to that allegation of it being a myth be to prove that it's not? So that we're talking about fairly recent history. We're not talking about 1,000 years ago. We're talking about within the time Canada was formed. So, within 50 years or 60 years, 70 years, and certainly the story has only been around for less than 5 years. So the origin of the story was based on a scientific analysis. So the next step in the scientific analysis is to gather more evidence. So that evidentiary flow of information has stopped. So this is a great mystery, but as we've just talked about, there is an interest in allowing the original allegation or assertion of what happened to become a permanent allegation. So it's an allegation can be almost more damaging than the proof.
But it's reshaped. It's like all history. All history is reshaped. There is nothing that we read about in a history textbook that is accurate. It's an approximation of truth of what happened, but it changes over time, and we get further and further away from an event. We certainly lose part of really what people experienced, and we. Anyhow, depending how we look at things and so forth, and in the case of Kamloops, they originally said that there was a finger bone and there was a rib bone, and one of them turned out to be that of an animal, and the other went missing. Right. So I think the fascinating thing about this is it just can't be opened up. It's Watergate all over again. And Tricky Dick, it's this idea of you can't open this up, because as soon as you open it up, it's going to get worse for you. And people have a short memory. The public has a short memory. The people in that building aren't going to come out and talk with me. They're just going to wait for me to go away, because they're believing it's all going to go away. They're concealing this. They're bearing, whether it's true or not, as you say, it's going to become part of history.
Right.
And I would love someone to come up to me and tell me, again, where the historical William tell me about him, or the historical Robin Hood. These people don't exist. But for many people, of course, and Pocahontas, my gosh, and the love with John Smith, these are great stories, but there's no foundation to them. So yes. I think this is it. Canada wanted to have a genocide. It wanted to have an Armageddon, a moment of destruction. Destruction, in this case, of everything that people believed about our country. It was just completely obliterated. In one school, the teachers murdered 215 children, and nobody said a word about it for all these decades. That is so iniquitous. That is
very
just
sinister. Very sinister,
and everybody's part of it. And everybody must pay reparations, and everybody must atone and show condolences and so forth. It's an exercise. This is what's happened. Is it's not about history. It's about religion. There's a new religion. It's a new cult, and we call it, postmodernism or political correctness or wokeism or whatever name people, social justice, whatever it is. It's the idea that you've got a new priesthood, and they're selling ideas, and it's not about evidence. It's about faith. And everybody's lining up behind because it's in their interest, because they have all the power. They've taken over all the institutions. So you go along with it, and you don't think, and you definitely don't open your mouth. Because there is, I may not be burned at a fire, but I think if they could, if the law in Canada allowed that, I think they would burn me.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, they're lighting the coals. All right.